What's going on, everybody? Ronnie DiMaggio here, product specialist at BMW of Morristown. And in today's video, we have a very, very exciting comparison for you guys. To my left is a roughly 25-year-old BMW 5 Series, and to my right is a brand new 2023 BMW 5 Series. And in this video, we are going to see what 25 years worth of time does to one of BMW's best-selling sedan models of all time, the BMW 5 Series. So, like I said, to my left is an E39 BMW 528. To my right is a G30 brand new 2023 BMW 530i xDrive. So we're going to shoot the rest of this video POV style, so you guys are going to see exactly what it's like to get behind the wheel of each car. We'll talk about primarily the driving differences between each car, which I'm sure are plentiful, and we'll also talk about tech and safety features and things like that, give you a thorough idea of where the 5 Series has come over the last 25 years. So let's get started behind the wheel of the E39. All right, here we are outside of the E39. We're going to hop in. I wanted to start outside, though, because I wanted to make sure we got a look at this key. This is the old school BMW key, and comparing it to the new one is already a nice way to see the difference. Obviously, this is a turnkey push button start. This car does not have comfort access, so you walk up, press the unlock button, and it unlocks. You hop in. E39 has really nice door noises. They sound very solid, really nicely built. Now, you might be wondering where we got our hands on this E39. This belongs to one of our sales managers, so big shout out to Shrev for letting us drive his beautiful 528 for a video today. So immediately upon hopping into an E39, we won't go super loud on the AC. It's a very nice ergonomic vehicle to sit in. It's super comfortable. The seats are really nice. And primarily what I'm getting at is the driving position is really, really nicely done. The seats can go really, really low. I'm somebody that likes to sit pretty low down in a car, and they go nice and low. Visibility is great at the front. Very easy to manage blind spots and reasonably big side mirrors. Visibility out the back is fine as well. So let's get started. So this car has a 5-speed manual transmission. Obviously that one is an 8-speed automatic, so that's a little bit of a difference, but the E39 was available with an automatic, but it was not available with all-wheel drive, and that car is all-wheel drive. Of course, this one is rear drive only. So we're going to get off the roof here, we'll head out to the road, and we'll go for a drive. All right, setting off in the 2000 BMW 528. So like I said, this is a 2000 car. It's from the year 2000, so it's not exactly 25 years older than the G30 that we're going to be driving, but it's close enough. So the first thing that I noticed when I got into this car is how small it feels, especially compared to the G30, the newer 5 Series. This car feels like a relatively compact car. It feels nicely shrunken around you. It doesn't feel particularly large or lumbering like the newer mid-size sedans. Even though they're only mid-size, they do tend to feel a little bit bigger than the cars that they replaced, like this E39 here. This car feels really compact. It feels like the car shrinks around you really nicely when you're driving it. The edges are super easy to place on the road. It's really nice to place in a lane, so I think the size on this car is great. I don't generally like really large cars, so the smaller the better, really, in my opinion. And the 5 Series, this particular 5 Series, the E39, strikes a nice balance between being big enough to use. The trunk, the back seat is big enough to use when you need it, but it's small enough to still feel, you know, a little bit more tossable than the newer cars do. So this car, being a 528, it's equipped with the M52. It's a 2.8 liter naturally aspirated inline 6-cylinder engine. Makes about 190 horsepower, a little over 200 pound-feet of torque. It was later replaced by the M54, then the N52, then, you know, the N20, the N54, N55, B58. All those engines came after it. But the big difference in powertrains between this car and the 530 that we're going to drive, this is a naturally aspirated straight 6. The 530 is a turbocharged. Hopefully that wind noise on the AC isn't too loud. The 530 is a turbocharged inline 4-cylinder 2-liter. So loses some displacement, gains a turbo, loses 2 cylinders as well. So I'm interested to see the difference between the straight 6 here and the turbo 4 in the 530. So a little third to second downshift there. It feels really good. The shifter isn't the most precise shifter I've used. In fact, no offense to Shrev, it's one of the less precise shifters that I've ever used. I think this car is about 178,000 miles. Maybe a shifter rebuild is in order, but it still feels fine. It's obviously perfectly usable and go through the gears totally fine. Not a problem at all, but it's a little bit less precise than you would want. But I'm sure that's just a function of this car. I'm sure brand new E39s felt a little bit different than that. So it's really nice that the E39 was available with a 5-speed, which is something you cannot get in the newer 5 Series. Not that I think they should really offer a manual in the G30. It's a mid-sized luxury sedan. I don't think anybody's really shopping for that in that segment anymore, but cool that the E39 had it nonetheless. So this car is not totally stock. It is very lightly modified. It's lowered a bit, has some wheel spacers and whatnot. Nothing that's really going to have a really meaningful impact on the driving characteristics, but the ride quality, we're on super smooth roads right now, but the ride quality is really nice. It rides smoothly. It feels like, you know, back in 2000, this was a really upmarket car. The 5 Series still is an upmarket car. It's a mid-size luxury SUV, but it's a BMW. It's a luxury car, and so it has to feel like that. Even though it's 23 years old, luxury 23 years ago was still pretty nice, as we're seeing. So it rides nice. It's reasonably well insulated. You don't hear a ton of noise outside. Cars going by, wind noise we'll get on the highway for a little bit coming up here, just to see what the wind noise is like. We'll get into the engine a little bit here. I don't want to rev it crazy high, but so it makes pretty good power up in the 3.4. That's like mid-range. Not crazy fast, definitely not an M5, but it's perfectly quick enough. You know, you don't really need much more than this for a daily driver car. As long as you're not looking for a speed demon, something really, really fast, you're going to be perfectly satisfied. And I didn't even get close to redline or full throttle there. That was just a little bit of mid-range, and it felt good. Got up to speed pretty nicely, so that's good. The M52 in this application, less than 200 horsepower, by today's standards is really just a paltry number, especially for a mid-sized sports sedan, but back then it wasn't that bad. It doesn't even feel that bad now. Wow, feels really good. That was fun. Around the corners. The steering is so good in these cars. So this is a rack and pinion steering system, all 6-cylinder. E39 models had rack and pinion. The V8's got recirculating ball, including the M5, just for packaging reasons. Now it's all electronically assisted, but this is rack and pinion hydraulic steering from an era when BMW was doing rack and pinion hydraulic steering better than just about anybody else. And wow, that steering was really impressive. It feels really good. So the reason I'm so pleased with it is it loads up really nicely when you actually put a little bit of, you know, G's into the car. If you put it into a corner with a little bit of speed, the steering wheel gets progressively heavier as you turn it, which is what steering wheels should do when you turn them, and this car does it. It feels really, really nice. Yeah, that steering feels fantastic. As far as the actual amount of feedback, like steering feel, as it is traditionally called, how much are the tires talking to you through the steering wheel? You know, not a ton. It's not the most communicative steering wheel or steering that I've ever felt, but it's enough. Steering feedback to me is not really as important as the way the wheel feels when you turn it, and I guess those two are, you know, married. They go hand in hand, but it's just the weight of the steering wheel, of the steering effort. How much effort does it take to turn it? Does it progress as you go through the corner? That's what I'm picky about in steering, and that's what I'm looking for, and this car felt great in that aspect. Accelerating onto a highway here. I'll give it a little bit more gas. Let's see. Makes a nice noise. Sounds really good. It's a classic sort of mechanical, almost raspy BMW straight 6 noise. Sounds really good. Not terribly loud. This car's bone stock as far as the engine goes, but sounds good, feels good as well. This is a nice little twisty off ramp, but we're not going to go crazy in Trev's car on a public road. But it just feels good. It feels a lot more nimble already. I haven't driven the 5 Series for this video yet, the newer one, but I've driven it in the past, and I can already tell you the E39 feels quite a bit more nimble and light on its feet than the new one does. Just going around some slow turns, it just feels a little bit more lively. It feels lighter. You can definitely feel that it's significantly lighter. As far as tech, amenities, things like that goes, this car, another one of its modifications is this head unit, which is Apple CarPlay capable. I'm recording with my phone right now, so I can't show you how the Apple CarPlay works, but it is Apple CarPlay capable, and you obviously have standard radio functionality as well. As far as safety features, you got airbags, and that's about it. No lane departure warning, no forward collision warning, no blind spot monitoring or anything like that. You get airbags and seatbelts. That was the standard of the day back when this car was new. So nothing, if you're looking for, advanced safety tech, you're looking in the wrong spot with this car, but that's okay. It's not a product. It is a product of its era, and its era did not have anything like that. So that's going to be a big difference as far as the driving experience and really the ownership experience goes. The safety tech in the new car is, 10 times better than anything in this car as far as the actual tech, the lane departure, blind spot, stuff like that. But also, I'm sure the crash test ratings are better. I'm sure it's safer in a crash. I'm sure the G30 has more airbags, all that, stuff that you would expect out of safety profiles. The G30 is going to be better, but I'm sure the E39 is a safe enough car. Now, this car, while we're talking about safety, there was a big Takata airbag recall on E39s. This car wasn't affected, thankfully, but a lot of E39s and E46s were. So if you have one of these cars, please don't drive it until you find out if you're eligible for that recall. And if you are, get it done ASAP, because you don't want to have your airbag turn into a frag grenade in the event of an accident. Don't take that lightly. But anyway, that's going to wrap up our quick drive in the E39. Overall, I'm really, really impressed. So this car's lowered a little bit, so I'm sure that contributes somewhat to the really nice body control and steering that I'm feeling. But that will do it for our quick drive of the E39. I'm really impressed. I've never driven one of these cars before. Never driven an E39 of any form, and this really surprised me. This car drives awesome. It's a ton of fun. As far as the steering goes, the steering feels fantastic. The body control is really nice. It feels nice and light. The chassis really feels buttoned down. It's very stable. So really, really nice car to be spending some time in. Really impressed, really happy that I got the chance to drive this car and share it with you guys. So let's go ahead and compare it to the G30 530i. All right, setting off in the 2023 BMW 530i xDrive. I'm sure that transition on video is pretty staggering, just the difference in what you guys see as far as the dashboard, the steering wheel, the gauges and whatnot. It's really a big difference. Hopefully that comes through on video, but you really feel that in person. This car feels every bit of the 25 years newer that it is. So let's talk about what that 25 years got you. It got you 7 inches in length, so the 5 Series from 2023 is 7 inches longer than the 5 Series that we just drove from the year 2000. That's the biggest thing that I noticed right away getting into this car, is how much bigger it feels than the E39 did. So it's 7 inches longer. It's also a couple inches wider, a couple inches taller. It's just bigger in every way, and you feel every inch of that increased size when you're parking it, when you're maneuvering it around, when you're driving it. Not in a bad way. It does not feel anywhere near what I would describe as cumbersome. It's a perfectly manageable car, and it's exactly what you'd expect from a midsize sedan of this era. But going right from the E39 25 years ago to the G30 today, it's quite a stark difference in size. So BMW did that to, keep up with the times and continue being competitive. People told them that they wanted bigger cars, and so BMW built bigger cars. The 3 Series, 5 Series, 7 Series, everything is bigger nowadays than it was before, and that's just because that's what the market wanted. And now that's what the market got, and that's all good and well. But for enthusiasts, I prefer smaller cars for their dynamic benefits, but that's just my personal preference. Most people disagree with me there and prefer the increased size, trunk space, and back seat space, and you get that in spades here. So the back seat's super usable, the trunk is really nice, and both great improvements over the E39. So the size is a big difference. The other immediately obvious thing is, of course, the technology. So you have a fully digital gauge cluster there. You have a fully digital, of course, center infotainment display. That's a touchscreen. You didn't get anything like that in the E39. You have those nice round analog gauges, RPM, you know, engine temperature, gas, and speed. That's all you needed. Now you have a whole slew of customizable options here in your gauge cluster, which is great. People love that. It's awesome as far as technology goes, keeping up with the times. This is a big improvement in the technology aspect over the E39. I do appreciate those two round, simple, clean, old school BMW gauges. I quite like that, but for modern times, obviously, you need digital gauge clusters, and you get that. So that's a big difference. As far as tech that's available, this car obviously comes standard with Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay, you know, Sirius XM radio, all those things that you would expect a brand new luxury sedan to have. E39 had some of that stuff. You had FM AM radio. You had some phone connectivity in certain models. I know you could order a phone down here in the center console, but overall they were not very tech heavy cars. They had what you needed. They had some neat stuff like preconditioning for the climate control systems, kind of like a series of codes that you have to punch in with the AC buttons. So they had some cool stuff like that, but they really just had the essentials, you know, trip computers and radio and stuff like that's what you'd expected in that area. Whereas this car has, you know, a ton of customizable settings and things like that we don't want to go through while we're driving, but you have navigation, all that good stuff. So the tech is a huge leap forward, and that's obvious. Let's talk a little bit about how the cars drive. First of all, comfort is a big thing, and it's the first, you know, the foremost difference between these two cars. This car is much more relaxing to drive. The E39 still has that element to it where it feels like a driver's car. The steering's really nice and direct. The suspension's a little bit firmer. That car that we drove, Shrev's car, is lowered a little bit. But even still, the chassis just feels a little bit stiffer, even though I'm sure this chassis is actually, you know, measurably stiffer than the older one was. The old one just feels like it's a little bit tighter. I'm sure most of that has to do with the steering, but whereas this car feels much more relaxing, much more smooth and comfortable to drive. There's no vibrations anywhere like there are in small amounts in the E39, and that is just an all-around benefit to the new car. It's just much more comfortable to drive. If you like a comfortable vehicle, which most 5 Series buyers do, the G30 is going to give that to you in spades. It's really quite comfortable to drive. The seats are also really nice. I love these seats. The side bolsters for your thighs come up quite high, and the adjustable torso bolsters are always in the right spot because you can adjust them yourself. So it's just a really comfortable car to drive. And for a 5 Series, you could put somebody in this car that isn't super familiar with BMW maybe and say this is a 7 Series, and they say, yeah, this drives like what I would expect a full-size luxury sedan to drive like. Come on in, fellow G30 owner. Go ahead. I'll like gray there on that one. That's a nice color. So yeah, this car is super comfortable to drive. It feels great, and that is a big benefit of it and a big difference compared to the E39, which is definitely less comfortable. From its seats to its suspension to its steering is more effort required to turn it. So it's less comfortable, but it is more fun to drive. So as far as the engine goes, this car is quite a bit more powerful, and if to you torque and acceleration is what equals fun to drive, this car is more fun to drive. But for me, I'd rather have, so there's a little bit of mid-range torque, feels really good, very peppy, very powerful for its class. 2-liter turbocharged inline-4, about 255 horsepower. That 55 horsepower makes more difference than you would think 55 horsepower does, or 60 horsepower, so big difference. But you know, if acceleration is what makes a car fun to you, then this car is more fun. It's more fast in a straight line, but the engine's not quite as soulful. It doesn't sound quite as good. It's not as rewarding to rev out and to really drive as the M52 that came in the E39 is. The steering is not as direct. It doesn't have that nice progressive load up that you get when you turn it. It's just not quite as engaging to drive this car as the E39 was. but that's because it's geared more towards comfort. That is, again, you know, it all comes down to what the market wants. And for the 5 Series, the market wanted something more comfortable, less, you know, sporty and fun to drive. It wanted something, you know, people want something that's comfortable for this segment, and that's what BMW gave them. You sacrifice that ability to, you know, that fun to drive factor a little bit. So this car is still fun to drive if you want it to be. You can very much still toss it around a back road, on ramps, off ramps, and stuff like that, and have fun with it. It is a willing companion to spirited driving, just not quite as much as the E39 is. You can tell that was built into the E39. It was built to be fun to drive. This car was built to be comfortable, but able to be fun to drive when you wanted it to be. So it was more of a secondary thing with this car being fun, whereas it was I'm sure, a more primary focus of the E39. That said, this car, if you're going on a back road, I'm taking a 5 Series over an A6 or an E-Class any day of the week. That's what BMW does. The ultimate driving machine. A lot of people just say it's, you know, it's a slogan, it's marketing. They really mean it. So if you want a driver's car in today's market, you want a brand new car, BMW is still the best option. Obviously, you know, within their competition, there are better driver's cars out there if you are willing to spend quite a bit more money, but for the markets they compete in, BMW is the best driver's car, and you can still feel that. Today, it is not a dedicated driver's car, but it is more fun than its competition, more of a driver's car than its competition. That was true of the E39, and it's true of the G30 today. So that DNA is still there. So if we had to boil things down, it really just comes down to the G30 is more comfortable, more relaxing, more soothing to drive, and the E39 is a little bit less of all of those adjectives, but a lot more fun, exciting, dynamic to drive. It will definitely put a smile on your face more than the G30 will, just from a steering, handling, and sort of soul perspective. The E39 is a bit more soul, or at least a more fun-spirited soul than the G30 does. But that is not a disadvantage of the G30 for the market that this car is targeted towards. This car sells really well, and if you're in the market for a nice, comfortable car that can be a little fun to drive, that has good tech, this car is an incredibly strong option, in my opinion. Of course, it's the best option on the market. A really nice frozen black G80 M3 there. Not sure if that's a wrapper paint in for service. Looks great. So that will pretty much do it for this comparison between the E39 and the G30. Really had a good time making this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching it. If you did, please let us know down in the comments if you want more videos like this. We'd be happy to do them, so just let us know if you liked it. Any suggestions, we'd love to hear them. So if I had to boil this down to, you know, a quick, too long, didn't read synopsis, the E39 is more fun to drive. It has better steering. It has a more lively feeling chassis. The engine has a little bit more character. Of course, it's got a manual, but the G30 has much more comfortable seats, a much more compliant suspension. It is much easier to turn. It feels much more relaxing to drive. So that's the main difference. Obviously, this car is bigger. It's just fun, comfort. You have to weigh those two. Those are the difference between those cars. One is, you know, mainly fun but can be comfortable. The other is mainly comfortable but can be fun. So that's the E39 versus the G30. I think it's a really good example of just sort of where the car market has gone. We've sort of moved away from, you know, series cars, at least in BMW world, being dedicated, you know, maybe not dedicated, but really good, solid driver's cars, to them more being comfortable, technologically advanced cars, while still being able to be fun to drive. If you know, want to toss it around a little bit, they'll do it, but they're more geared towards tech and comfort. At least the 5 Series, I should say. So really interesting to see that. These cars both do a really good job of being emblematic of their eras, and hopefully that came through on camera. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate your support, and we will see you in the next one.